everyone, good morning, welcome back to the channel. I don't know how you touch people's poop and pee and blood. Thank you so much for every little time you spend on this channel. That makes me really happy. Today's video is just gonna be talking about things that people should consider before considering a career in nursing, most especially as international students. Being an international student is different from being a domestic student in the sense that as an international student, you're migrating from your country of birth or the country where you've spent most of your life getting a certain education. That's not the country that you wish to go study in. For example, I'm going to be considered an international student if I lived in Nigeria for a chunk of my life, or if I lived in Ghana, South Africa, or in London or the United States for a very long time, school there, and then I decided to migrate to a different country for the purpose of study that I have no citizenship with or no residency with. So you are considered an international student in that regard, which means that a lot of things that is going to be applicable to, let's say, citizens and residents of a particular country will not be applicable to you who is going to be migrating from your own country to this other country where you want to go. And a lot of things are going to be different in terms of admission, finances, scholarship, monetary wise, and a number of things as well. So this video is just going to be a quick rundown of 7 to 8 particular things that I feel like people should look out for this, people should watch out for this before considering a career in nursing. So without further ado, the first thing on my list is the admission requirements. A lot of schools, they have certain requirements that they want from the students who want to come into the program, and a lot of times it's usually different from the domestic students' requirements. It's their citizens, their residents, like people who live in a country, school in a country, they've been in the system for a very long time. So the requirements for these people and the requirements for us as international students will never be the same. Also, they look at something we call equivalence, in the sense that, for example, in most West African states, we do this WAEC examination after our high school, and that is our equivalent to whatever might be their equivalent here after the students had done high school. GPAs can be in over 4, over 5 usually back home, but here a lot of times GPA is called out of 4. So there's some discrepancy, but a lot of similarities in the sense that you just have to look at what you have and then bring it together with what they have and see where you qualify in terms of like getting admitted into the school of your choice. In terms of admission requirements, there are specific subjects that are very, very important. For example, if you wanted to do something like a career in nursing, I'm not saying that art students cannot get into the program, but it may require a certain science course. Some schools in Africa, they do this thing whereby if you go to an arts class, you have the option, you have the opportunity to take a science course. That is actually a good time if you know that, okay, along the line I might need to do something like this, you're not very sure. But I am always of the opinion that if you can take a mix of both sides, you should do it. I'll tell you all this quick, brief, short story. I was a science student back in high school, but I've always wanted to be an accountant up until my SS3. So basically, I was a science student. Why did I go to science class when I wanted to be an accountant, right? I didn't have strong bearings when it comes to calculation and mathematics. So I was like, okay, as an accountant, you need to know math, right? You need to know calculations. You need to know how to deal with. There's a lot of figures involved. I was like, okay, let me just be an accountant. Let me just do science, sorry. And that way, I kind of like maybe get some exposure to calculations, to mathematical works and whatnot. That's how I ended up doing sciences. It was just a personal decision. And I went ahead to write JAM twice. So back when I was going to high school, we had opportunity to write JAM 2 times. So you take it in your senior secondary school 2 and your senior secondary school 3. So your last 2 years of high school, you take JAM twice. So I took art JAM in SS2 and took science JAM in SS3. Some people might be like, okay, so how did you study? How did you go about it if you were taking those art courses when you were in science class? Truth be told, I did some personal studying. If you're going to enroll to write an exam in things that you're not familiar with or that you've not been taught, you have to study. And I knew that I had to take that extra step to study because that's what I wanted to do. And I'm not saying that people who do arts cannot study nursing. You can also go to school back home. You can do some bridging courses. You can take extra credits and you can transfer, or you can even come here, do open studies, take extra credits that will help you get onto the program of your choice that you're looking for. A second requirement that I'm gonna say is English proficiency. I know a lot of schools right now are trying to waive that, in the sense that if your primary language of learning in terms of like primary school, secondary education was English, that means you don't need to take IELTS proficiency to prove that you're a speaker of the language or that you know and understand the language to a great deal. What they are trying to do now is cut back on those unnecessary things. All in all, their requirements is their requirements. Some people choose to take that English course, which is still okay. I do highly recommend it on my path. Like if you have the funds, I do encourage that. I support that. The second thing on my list is finance and living support. This is very, very important. Like finance is the top of the bar. I put that at the top of the bar because you need money to go to school. Money is very, very important when it comes to education. That can make or break your stay in school. Speaking from experience, I've been a victim. And of course, there are certain points in your life where, you know, things might be low for whoever your sponsor is, and that affects you eventually. But what I'm trying to say is that you want to have just enough, or I mean close to just enough, or something to carry you for a little while before you get into the program, to carry you for at least a year to two. A lot of schools nowadays usually require you to have at least the first year's tuition paid down, right? Or the immigration even requires you to show a certain proof of financial support or ability to sponsor yourself, because this will eventually affect you if you migrate and then you're dealing with issues of finance as well as dealing with issues of studying. It is tough. I've gone through that experience and it's not fun at all. And also the second thing I'm going to talk about in this is the living situation. So accommodation is so important. So if you know that you're going to be migrating, this is something that you have to start at home, like in your own territory, to look ahead for, because you don't want a situation where you move and then you're struggling to find a shelter. That is a matter of safety, not just about the finance. With the finances and living situation, you also need to take account other basic necessities of life: food, clothing, okay, your educational needs while you're going to be in school. You want to make sure you have just enough or close to just enough to cover you for a certain period of time. This takes me to my next point of working. If you have the ability to work, if you have the capacity to work, you do it. Because for me, based on my own personal experience, there is no need to migrate to a country that allows you as a student to do certain kind of work, certain kind of labor that you can get paid for, that you can earn a living, you can earn some income. Because truth be told, I see it in a negative light when I'm spending foreign currency in the province, like in my country of living. I just find it so bizarre, because you have to consider things like exchange rate, for example. Like you spend a lot of that foreign currency in the country where you want to study. If you can, you should try. You should try to work. And I know sometimes it may not be easy with school and work, and that's okay. But finding those times around your weekend, again, it's only 20 hours per week that a person can work. If it means you not taking all 6 courses, you don't need to take all 6 courses per semester. You can just do the required. The fact that a program is scheduled for 4 years doesn't mean that you have to go to school and finish the program in 4 years. A lot of times there's so many things that can cause a setback in your life. There could be some financial challenge, some academic challenge, maybe sickness, death in the family, you know, quite a number of serious things here and there. But I always tell people, if you have the ability to work, do that. That also helps you support yourself. This is the 4th one. So immigration and travel requirements. I've said this a lot of times, a number of times on my channel. Like if you've been a very regular follower of this channel, I've said it a lot of times that the immigration and the school you choose to attend, they are not affiliated in any way. Because there's a misperception that some people think that, okay, because they've got admission from a school, that automatically means that the immigration will grant them a visa. Or because they have a visa, a school is going to grant them admission. No, that's not how it works. Usually you have to apply to your school of choice that you want to attend, and that's the admission you use towards applying for a study permit and a student visa. In saying that, you can have the admission and you don't get the student permit and the study visa, because that is entirely up to the immigration. So that's a lot of misconception people have. So that's why it's also advised by the immigration that you must have an admission first before a visa. It doesn't mean that one guarantees the order, not necessarily. And if you also find yourself in a situation whereby or you don't know what's happening with your admission or with your application process towards immigration, you can prompt them, you can follow up, and these are all things that can be done online through emails. I've said this a number of times. Emailing government officials, immigration services, university, that is the best method of communication, honestly. Not phone calls, not social media, but email. That goes along with the government, schools, like institutions are very, very responsive to emails. That I find, even myself, I find myself even being more responsive to emails than phone calls and like social media texting and whatnot. So I usually tell people the best way to contact immigration services or to contact the school especially is by writing them an email of your consent. The next thing on my list is learning never ends. Okay, you've migrated, you've started schooling, you're now in your first year, you've settled your accommodation, you're happy, there's a lot of challenges around you, you're going with the flow of the weather and all that stuff. It doesn't get harder, it gets easier, because I feel like the hardest part of school is adaptation. Like, you move, you migrate, a place you're not very familiar with. Or what is going on here? Why is it so cold? What are they saying? Like, I don't understand what the professor is saying and whatnot. We've all been there, and that's a normal experience. That is what makes your first year, your first time, extremely stressful and challenging, and that is totally normal. You have to continuously unlearn things, especially in school, in terms of like social life, the education itself. When it comes to nursing, those anatomy, those physiology, all of those important basic foundational courses are the most important, because they form the basis of your learning eventually, and that's how you build to get to the top. And again, when you get to the top, or when you see yourself that you're getting it, there's more and more being added to the bar. Like, you need to keep going up, and more will keep being added, because now that you've gotten certain things, you understand this, like it makes more sense, like it's very logic to you. Now it's time to, you know, get those learning, like transfer the knowledge that you have, add new knowledge, add new skills, and keep going. That's how it is. That's how it is in school, and that's how it is once you get out of school. The next thing I'm gonna say, people be like, oh, I don't know how you touch people's poop and pee and blood. Anyways, long story short, that is the gross part of nursing. Maybe people don't really talk about it, but it's there. That's what you do, honey. Like, it's normal. Like, you have to do it, because people are very vulnerable. Like, your patients are vulnerable. They are sick people. They cannot do these things by themselves. Like, they are the lowest point in their life, and it's embarrassing. We all know that. We all acknowledge that. But that is part of life. That is what has to be done. The blood, the poop, the urine, the vomiters, all those things that are considered gross, you will be in those situations, okay? The dead bodies, yes, all of it is part of what you have to do. There is no escape route in that regard, okay? So you have to be prepared. Again, I'm not saying that everybody has to do that, not necessarily. It depends on the area of nursing that you choose to work in. But the truth is that with every nursing education, like when you go to school, they are focused more on the clinical piece, so the acute care piece. But truth be told, the great chunk of your clinical practice is going to be in a hospital setting, where you're actually seeing people who are suffering a disease process, like something very serious, where you have to be heavily involved even in their personal space. It's there. It's not gonna go anywhere, because a lot of people, especially older people, are the ones who are using a lot of resources in our healthcare system. Why? Because as you age, it's normal that your physiological function has to decline. No one can change that. Despite everything I've said, no one should be discouraged, because nursing as a career on its own is very prestigious. Regardless of why you've decided to come into the profession, just know that there's tons and tons of opportunities and roles that a person can explore. Everybody doesn't need to work in the hospital. It even gets boring or tiring at certain points in your life. And not everybody needs to work in the community. Not everyone needs to be online or doing virtual telehealth care. Not everybody needs to work for the government immigration services, pandemic or vaccine and stuff like that. There's so many things you can do with that. Okay, you can be a nurse trainer, you can be a social media expert, this whatever you want to do with that degree of yours, that career of yours. It's not like, oh, because I did nursing I have to go do a clinical practice. Yeah, it's nice as a beginner or as a baby nurse to solidify your skills, your confidence and whatnot in an acute care. I'm not saying that you cannot get to any other place, but I'm just saying that there's a lot of places that people can explore, and you should not just be focused on one path because you think that, oh my god, that's so cool, caring for kids, or that's so cool being a labor and delivery nurse, or oh my god, that's so cool being a nurse manager. There's a lot of things you can do, you know. Open your mind, explore. Like if you're a young nurse, you have to do everything you can. Work in a lot of places, work tons and tons of places. You don't need to settle for one unit, you don't need to settle for one area of nursing practice. If you're young in a particular environment and you're staying there for like 10 years, 20 years, you don't know what other places look like. You don't have experience in those areas of life. So you also have to get out of that comfort zone of yours, because you don't want to be comfortable doing one thing for years. You need to go out there and, you know, see how other things are being done, how other areas or other body systems or, you know, other areas of nursing and medicine is being handled. You're solid in terms of your experience over the years. That brings me to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this sit down session. It's been a while that I did this. Don't forget to share, like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in a subsequent video. Goodbye for now.